Black teacher suspended for telling the truth. But her students start a revolution. The late afternoon sunlight filtered through the tall windows of room 214, casting a soft golden glow across the worn linoleum floor and rows of desks that bore the signatures, initials, and scrawled dreams of decades of students who had come and gone. The air smelled faintly of old books, dry erase markers, and something indefinably human, the kind of scent that only accumulates in places where truth is spoken, minds are opened, and hearts are quietly reshaped. Ms. Alana Pierce, a Black history teacher with a quiet intensity in her gaze and a calm fire in her voice, stood at the front of the room with her hands folded over a dog-eared copy of The Fire Next Time. She was in her mid-30s, with natural curls pulled back into a loose bun and a wardrobe of earth-toned blazers and long skirts that made her presence feel like both a protest and a poem. Her classroom wasn't just a place for tests and worksheets. It was a sanctuary, a battleground, and a greenhouse all at once. History, she said slowly, her voice deliberate, is not a collection of dates or kings or wars alone. It is memory, it is pain, it is progress, and it is resistance. Real history makes people uncomfortable, and that's how you know it's working. A student in the front row, Jalen, 17, with quiet eyes and a journalist's instinct for tension, raised his hand but didn't wait to be called on. But Ms. Pierce, they don't want us to know this stuff, do they? Like, they don't want us to see the system. A flicker of pride crossed Alana's face. She placed the book down gently on the lectern and moved toward the window, looking out over the neatly trimmed lawn of Magnolia High School, where the American flag fluttered against the bright blue sky like a contradiction. They? She repeated softly, then turned back to the class. Jalen, there have always been those who'd rather keep us comfortable and quiet than informed and empowered. But here's the truth. If you don't know your past, they'll write your future without asking for your opinion. There was a stillness in the room, the kind that only comes when students know they are being told something important. Not for the test, not for extra credit, but for life. Ms. Pierce? Came a voice from the back. It was Aisha, the daughter of a local pastor and the unofficial heart of the senior class. Do you ever worry they'll try to stop you for teaching us this way? Alana didn't answer immediately. She walked slowly to her desk, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out a thick folder. It was labeled Parent Complaints, 2022 to present. She held it up for the class to see. I don't worry, she said, because I'm already on the radar. But I also know this, the truth is worth it. Every single time. There were murmurs, not of fear, but of admiration, of solidarity. What she didn't tell them was that just that morning, she'd received a formal warning from the district office. A parent, anonymous, of course, had complained that she was indoctrinating students with racialized narratives and failing to present a balanced, patriotic version of history. The letter was typed, cold, and unsigned. It had felt less like feedback and more like a threat wrapped in bureaucratic ribbon. But Alana had read it twice, then placed it carefully in the back of the same folder, where it joined a long line of similar objections, each one proof to her that she was doing something right. That night, as she sat in her small apartment surrounded by stacks of lesson plans and half-drunk mugs of tea, her phone lit up. A text from Jalen. Ms. P. Can I interview you for the school paper? I want to talk about what history really is, not the district's version. She smiled, thumb hovering over the screen for a moment before replying. Of course, but only if you're ready for pushback. Already got it, Mr. Wilkins said it's too political for the school paper, so I'm thinking of going independent. Alana's smile widened. She typed, "That's how every revolution starts." She didn't yet know just how right she would be. By the time Wednesday rolled around, word had spread. Whispers passed between lockers and behind textbooks. MS. Pierce is in trouble. They're watching her. Did you hear about the parent who called the superintendent directly? Some of it was rumor, some truth, but the impact was the same. A cloud had settled over room 214. Jalen sat at the back of the class that day, not with his usual open notebook and highlighter, but with a quiet storm brewing behind his glasses. He watched Alana closely, noting how she smiled at her students with the same warmth as always, but occasionally her gaze flicked to the classroom door, as if expecting someone to walk through it with bad news. And then it happened. Halfway through her lesson on Reconstruction and how the promises of equality were quickly undercut by systemic policies like black codes and Jim Crow, there was a knock. Not a friendly knock either, it was sharp, clipped like it had been practiced. The door opened. Mr. Cranford, the assistant principal, stepped in. Balding, pale, and always slightly uncomfortable in his too tight button-downs, he gave a thin smile. "Ms. Pierce, can I speak with you for a moment?" Alana met his eyes. She nodded slowly. "Of course. Class, I'll be back in a moment." Begin reading the excerpt from The Souls of Black Folk. Page 117. As she stepped into the hallway, the door closed behind her like a final period. Cranford didn't waste time. "I want to be clear, Ms. Pierce. There's concern from the board. You've been teaching material that isn't on the approved curriculum outline." "I teach truth," she replied, her tone calm but unyielding. "If the board finds that threatening, perhaps the outline needs revising." He sighed and looked away for a moment, as if trying to remain diplomatic. "This isn't personal. It's policy. You're expected to follow guidelines, especially when discussing controversial topics. Some parents have expressed discomfort with the way you frame American history." "Facts don't have frames," Alana said. "They have context. They have consequences. If you want me to lie to my students to make them feel safer in ignorance, I won't do it." Cranford frowned. "I'm asking you to teach within the curriculum. If not, what?" She cut in, her voice firm now. "You'll suspend me for teaching what actually happened?" There was a pause. Then came the words she'd anticipated, quiet, bureaucratic, weaponized in their gentleness. "We're placing you on administrative leave, effective immediately." She didn't flinch. "For how long?" "Until we complete our review. Likely a few weeks. Please turn in your badge at the front office. Someone will escort you to your car." It wasn't the first time Alana had been underestimated. But standing there in that beige hallway, surrounded by laminated posters about character counts and pride in learning, she felt something deeper. Not just disappointment, but fire. Righteous, steady fire. Back in the classroom, Jalen watched the clock tick away. It had been 10 minutes. Aisha bit her lip. "You think they're suspending her?" Jalen nodded slowly. "I don't think I know." The classroom, filled with pages and silence, felt suddenly too small. He opened his laptop. "What are you doing?" Aisha asked. He looked up at her. "Starting a petition. Starting a fire. Whatever they're doing to her, they don't get to do it in the dark." Within the hour, a post appeared on Instagram. A black and white photo of Ms. Pierce speaking in class, her eyes bright, one hand raised in mid-thought. "She taught us truth. Now she's being punished for it. Magnolia High, do better. Hashtag stand with Ms. Pierce. Hashtag teach truth." By the time the last bell rang, it had over 600 shares. And counting. The next morning, Magnolia High's parking lot buzzed in a way it hadn't since homecoming. Students arrived earlier than usual, but not for pep rallies or SAT prep. They came with signs tucked under jackets, shirts with marker-written slogans, and purpose in their walk. Jalen stood by the school gates, holding a cardboard placard that read, "Teaching history is not a crime." Beside him, Aisha held one with bold red lettering, "Bring back MS. Pierce, we deserve the truth." Overnight, their post had gone viral, not just within their school, but across the district and beyond. Students from other schools started commenting, some even showing up in support. The hashtags had gained traction. Hashtag Stand with MS Pierce. Hashtag Truth in the Classroom. Hashtag Black Voices Matter. Local news vans were parked near the entrance by 8:15 a.m. Inside the school, Principal Dorsey watched the live stream from her office. Jaw tight, coffee untouched. She dialed her district contact, her voice low and clipped. "Yes, the students are protesting. Yes, outside. No, I can't remove them, they're not on campus yet. But it's going to be a mess." She paused. "And yes, the news is here." Down the hallway, MS. Pierce sat in her small apartment, eyes wide, phone in hand, reading the hundreds of messages pouring in on her socials. "You changed how I think about history. Don't let them silence you. Because of you, I want to be a teacher." She scrolled to a video taken by Jalen. It showed him standing outside the school gates, speaking directly to the camera. "They suspended MS. Pierce for telling us the truth, for making us think critically, for not sugarcoating history. So we're standing up now, because if they silence her, who's next?" Text for preview image. Loudspeaker. "They suspended her for telling us the truth. So we walked out fire." MS. Pierce put a hand over her mouth. She wasn't someone easily shaken. But this moved something deep inside her. Something that hadn't stirred in years. Later that afternoon, Principal Dorsey held an emergency staff meeting. The mood was tense. Teachers sat stiffly in chairs, watching her walk to the front with that tight-lipped professionalism only seen during major PR crises. "Let me be very clear," she began. "We are committed to a safe and inclusive learning environment. The district will release a statement. Until then, no one is to comment publicly on MS. Pierce's situation. This includes social media, interviews, or off-the-record conversations." A hand raised in the back. "Mr. Alvarez, the science teacher. What are we supposed to say when students ask us why the best teacher in the school was punished for teaching documented history?" Dorsey's expression didn't change. "Redirect them to administration." Another hand went up. MS. Walsh from English. "You're not answering the question." Dorsey exhaled through her nose. "We are following protocol. Let the investigation conclude." But the truth was, the story had already escaped the walls of the school, and no press release could put it back in the box. Meanwhile, Jalen sat cross-legged on the grass with other students, surrounded by posters and energy. "We can't let this stop at one protest," he said. "We need to keep pressure on the district. We need parents to see. We need teachers to know we have their back." Aisha leaned in. "Let's plan a town hall. This weekend. At the community center. We'll invite news outlets. Make this bigger than Magnolia High." Jalen smiled. "Now you're talking." And in that moment, beneath the weight of injustice, a movement was beginning. Student-led, focused, and burning with clarity. The Magnolia Community Cultural Center hadn't seen this many people since the mayor's campaign visit 5 years ago. Folding chairs filled every corner of the hall, while latecomers leaned against walls or sat cross-legged near the stage. There were parents, students, retired teachers, local activists, and even a handful of reporters from regional outlets. On stage, a simple wooden podium stood before a banner hastily pinned above. Truth in education equals justice for all. Jalen adjusted the mic, eyes scanning the crowd. We didn't expect so many of you. He began, voice just loud enough to rise above the room's expectant hush. But I guess that just proves something we've been saying all along. This isn't just about one teacher. This is about the right to learn, the right to know. The audience erupted in applause. Behind him sat Ms. Pierce, dressed modestly in a slate blue blouse and dark jeans. No makeup, hair pulled into a soft bun. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, but her eyes, alert, focused, and filled with unspoken gratitude, told a story all their own. Aisha came up next, her tone more fiery. Some of us used to think school was just about getting grades. But Ms. Pierce showed us what school should be, about discovering who we are, where we come from, and how the past shapes our future. When they suspended her, they didn't just silence a teacher. They tried to erase a mirror, and we're here to put it back. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Speak!" Another, "Let her teach." As the event continued, parents took turns at the mic. A mother of 3 recounted how her daughter came home crying, not because of Ms. Pierce's lessons, but because they were the first time school ever made her feel seen. A former student of Ms. Pierce's, now in college, shared how her AP history essays, once ignored, were suddenly getting praise, all because of the critical thinking skills Ms. Pierce instilled. Then a hand rose from the back. A tall man with a shaved head and the confident stance of someone used to being heard. He took the mic, introducing himself as Councilman Bernard Walker. "I came tonight because I've been watching, and I'll be honest, at first I thought this was just another personnel dispute. But what I see here is bigger than policy. It's about truth and fear, and what happens when one challenges the other." He paused, letting the words settle. "I'll be requesting a formal review of Ms. Pierce's suspension at the next board meeting. And I won't be the only one." The crowd roared. Even Ms. Pierce, who'd stayed mostly silent, placed her hand over her heart, eyes glassy. Later that night, Ms. Pierce sat in her small apartment, surrounded by flowers students had left on her doorstep. She opened a letter that had no return address. Inside was a folded sheet of notebook paper. In careful handwriting, "You taught me that history isn't just dates. It's voices, stories, struggle. You gave me mine back. I promise I won't forget." No name, just a heart drawn in the corner. Meanwhile, inside the district office, a storm was brewing. Superintendent Harper stared at his inbox, now overflowing with angry emails, parent petitions, and letters from local officials. His assistant peeked in. "They're asking if you'll speak at the board meeting." He rubbed his temples. "Schedule it." She hesitated. "And Ms. Pierce?" He didn't answer immediately. Then, "Tell legal I want options. Quiet ones." The movement was growing. But behind closed doors, systems were stirring, too, the kind that don't go down without a fight. The night of the school board hearing, the entire parking lot of the Magnolia Unified School District overflowed with cars. People parked in nearby lots, on residential streets, even on the sidewalk. Inside, every seat in the public auditorium was taken, with latecomers standing shoulder to shoulder in the aisles. Ms. Pierce walked in with quiet dignity, flanked by Aisha, Jalen, and several fellow teachers who had finally found the courage to support her publicly. She wore the same calm expression she always did before a difficult class. Not afraid, but prepared. The board members sat elevated on a dais like judges at a tribunal, papers neatly arranged, faces unreadable. The superintendent sat near the center, expression tight. A board member cleared her throat. Tonight's agenda item, reconsideration of the suspension of MS. Erica Pierce, educator at Magnolia High School. A hush fell. Jalen approached the mic first. "We're not here just for MS. Pierce," he began. "We're here because education without truth is just memorization. And that's not what we deserve." His voice didn't tremble. Neither did Aisha's when she followed, sharing how the sanitized version of history taught before MS. Pierce made her feel invisible. "She didn't preach," she said. "She presented facts and trusted us to think for ourselves." Dozens spoke, each testimony like a brick laid into a growing wall of resistance. Parents, alumni, even a retired teacher who said she'd spent years afraid to teach honestly. The crowd never booed, never shouted. But the weight in the room became undeniable. Finally, the board opened discussion. Some members squirmed. One leaned into her mic, voice clipped. "We must protect curriculum standards." Another, the youngest on the board, responded gently, "And who writes those standards? Because maybe they need protecting from something too." The final vote was called. One by one they spoke. Abstain. Nay. Aye. Aye. Nay. Aye. 3-2 in favor. The suspension was overturned. The room erupted in applause. People hugged, cried, clapped. Someone started a chant. "Let her teach. Let her teach." Weeks later, MS. Pierce returned to class. No banners, no fanfare, just rows of students waiting, pencils ready, eyes wide. Aisha sat front and center, notebook open. Jalen nodded respectfully from the back. She placed her bag down, pulled out a book, and began. "Let's start with a question. Who gets to write history? And why does that matter?" No one whispered. No one looked away. Because now they knew the answer wasn't in the textbook. It was in the courage to ask.